Very good. Gentlemen, everybody looks like they're here. Okay, as follows. Adequate notice of the June 28th, 2012 meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting written notice and agenda of this meeting on the bulletin board in the municipal building, 1000 Route 10, Whippany, Township of Hanover, and by hand delivering, mailing, or faxing such notice and agenda to the following newspapers: the Hanover Eagle, Morris County's Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and by filing same with the Township Clerk. May I have a roll call?
Committeeman Schleifer.
Here.
Committeeman Faramasi.
Here.
Committeeman Bruno.
Here.
Committeeman Capola.
Here.
And Mayor Francioli.
Here.
5 members in attendance, sir.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, would you all please rise and join me in a pledge allegiance to the flag? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Be seated. At this time, the Township Committee has the honor of recognizing our Girl Scouts, 6 of whom are here tonight, from Troop 2178. Okay, and our troop leaders here. Sandy, where are you? Ian? Okay, our troop leader. And these are for various awards, and let me tell you, there isn't anyone on this Township Committee that doesn't appreciate all they read about the ladies and what they accomplish. And I personally had the honor of being there in Central Park when we planted a tree along with one, and it truly was rewarding for that. And we have tonight some certificates and some letters of commendation that we'd like to give the ladies. And as I do, I'd like to read a little bit of a synopsis of what each did. And for the Gold Award, Lauren O'Connor of troop number 1799. Lauren, where are you? Okay, she was with us tonight. Lauren?
2178.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Lauren organized the Day of Service and Remembrance for the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 held on September 11, 2011, commemorated the 10th anniversary of the terrorist attacks. The event involved a cleanup and beautification effort at Central Park, right over here on Jefferson Road and Eden Lane. 50 volunteers, many youngsters from the township collected litter, weeded, etc. And the highlight of it was that the event of the ceremony, which was a London plane tree that was planted by the township, dedicated to those who had lost their lives at that time. And so we certainly commend Lauren for her effort. The Silver Award goes to 4 young ladies here, troop number 77. And I don't know if all are here, but I'm just Gina Mellon.
They're not here either.
No, they're not
2178.
here.
2178.
Okay. But Troop 77's the Silver Award Service Project created a special holiday craft for senior residents that belong to Meals on Wheels, which is our Dial-A-Ride program in Hanover Township. They made Halloween jack-o'-lanterns, Thanksgiving placemats, gingerbread houses, Valentine's Day cards, and placemats, spring basket flowers, etc. Residents were surprised and excited to receive the gifts. I would be too. They're very nice. Very good. And finally, under the Silver Award was troop number 2178, and part of that, Brittany Branco, Jessica B.U.I. Boy, Kate Cantrell, Maggie Esposito, Jessica Glinken, Christine Jones, Jennifer Kim, Susan Kim, Sarah Matriciano, and Michelle Pan. And Troop 2178, the Silver Award Service Project, involved making 153 hand-tied fleece blankets, donating them to a nonprofit organization called Project Linus, whose mission is to provide love, a sensitive, secure, warm, and comfort to children who are seriously ill, traumatized, or otherwise in need through the gifts of these new and handmade blankets. Troop visited 2 local hospitals, delivered portions of the blankets, and the remainder were all delivered to Project Linus coordinator, who distributed the blankets to children in needs in local community hospitals. Very good. Ladies, outstanding. That's all I can tell you. I'd like to... Okay, we have some certificates. certificates and awards we'd like to present to you. We need a little, John, you want to?
Sure.
Help me, Deputy Mayor, let him do some work tonight. Now,
They're on the fourth table. On the fourth
The other table
Ron.
one.
over here,
Yes.
these are, all right, ladies, these are with us, okay. All right, John, why don't you start with those letters, and, okay, Brittany, okay, got that? Here we go.
Congratulations,
We got it.
Brittany, and we have a commendation letter for you.
There you go,
Good job.
congratulations, nicely done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica.
Jessica, okay. No? I'll keep Kate, you with us? There we go. Kate, congratulations. Very nice. Thank you for all you've done. There
Good
you
job, Kate. Well done.
Good.
Maggie, Maggie here? There you go. Okay, Maggie, thank you. Very nice, there you go. And a letter.
Well done, Maggie. Good job.
Jessica? Okay, Jessica here? No? Okay. Go right there. We'll see that, you know what? We'll see that you get these and you can give them, yeah, okay. Okay, Christine, are you here? No? Okay. Jennifer Kim. All right. Jennifer, thank you. Very nice, there you go. Letter.
Great job. Thank you so much.
Good. Susan Kim. Not related, are you?
We're twins.
Susan, here you go.
Great job. Susan.
Nicely
Thank you
done.
so much.
Nicely done.
Sarah Mathesano and
It's not,
Pam.
okay.
Michelle.
Oh, Michelle's here.
Yeah, you know. Hold on. Michelle.
We're sorry, Michelle.
There you go, very nice, and this is yours. Nicely done, very good. Now we can.
Good job.
The rest of these, can we put these in the good care of our scout mom here? Yeah, okay. See that others get them? There you go. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we do want to do that. David.
David, the photo man.
We're gonna take a photo walking out of here.
Stand up.
Jim left there, right? How's Jim?
Tighten it up so you get the. Okay. How's that
Everybody?
doing in Central Park?
1, 2, 3. One more.
Cousin?
1, 2, 3.
Big turn out.
Great job, everyone.
Thank you very much.
I have to tell you, our scouting program here in Hanover, between our Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, we just did another Eagle Scout this past spring, and it's a very, it's a very active and involved program. Very nice. Okay, all right, gentlemen, we'll give those ladies a few minutes to get themselves going here. Okay, Joe. There we go. Yeah. All right, gentlemen, at this time, I'd like to open the meeting to the public. Any items not appearing on the agenda, motion to open?
So moved. Second.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open. If you'd like to address the Township Committee at this time, please do so from the podium, giving us your name and address for the record.
I will. Thank you. Just a second. Nice to see you again. It's been about a year.
There you
go. How are you? Great.
Oh, good. I think I know what this is about.
Thank you.
Oh, they're getting better looking, I'll say that.
I now live here in Whippet. When I was here last time, I lived down the shore.
You don't get a tax abatement for these, but go ahead.
Does that show you have plenty of these? Go pass one down. Okay, you can share this. Let me get back to the podium.
So this guy was younger?
And your 4 minutes starts right now.
Okay, that's all I need. My name is Ed Klein, and I'm with a company called Green Forest Technologies, and we're in the business of recycling used clothing. Now, as I stated, I was here about a year ago, and I've been working with Joe Giorgio, and I'm just here tonight to give you an update as to what the other towns, your neighbors, are doing, and try and, again, see if you can do it. As I said, I live in Whippany now, so I have a little bit more of an interest. I'd like the town to take a closer look at that. More importantly, all your neighbors are getting involved. Florham Park, Parsippany, Randolph, and the photograph I gave you most recently is a picture of Councilman Frank DeMeo Jr. Maybe some of you gentlemen know who he is. He's down at East Hanover, and I made the same presentation to him that I've made to you previously. He thought it was a great idea, so about 3 weeks ago, we placed 2 clothing donation bins at the Babies R Us shopping center down on Route 10, and as you can see, the money is designated for the Community Emergency Response Team. Now, in Florham Park, the money from the sale of the clothing goes to support the local PPA. In Parsippany, the money is being used for the SRO program for a school resource officer. I've been trying to present this for a year, back and forth, and I don't understand why we now can't at least try it. It's working for the other towns. I know that we're recycling aluminum cans, we're recycling bottles, we're recycling newspapers. Why isn't the town recycling used clothing? It benefits the environment. Plus, the township would make possibly tens of thousands of dollars a year doing it. It's a no-brainer. We set up the program with you. We do all the work. I think it's time. Some of the other things that I want to address is you can have the choice of where the proceeds go. Some of the money could go to the library, the
On
landmark.
several occasions, as we know, and we did review it in the past. And by the way, I'm happy to say that we can always review it again. I will restate our issues with this, and I must tell you that I firsthand saw some of the results of some of these bins that are not properly taken care of. And I think that was in Rockaway Township, and I think that was St. Joseph's Church, and it was a blighted site of clothing all over the ground, all over the area. I took some pictures, brought them to you, brought them to the...
I never saw the pictures, but you did address that at one of the meetings.
It was a concern that we have, having these bins. As a matter of fact, I will tell you, we've had 1 or 2 already pop up, and in keeping with our position on this thing, and these were with churches and in the church yards, we had them removed. And so we've been consistent, I will say that for the record, that there's been no one allowed one of these bins. You mentioned that clothing is coming into this East Hanover Toys R Us or
Yes,
Toys R Us area?
when I was down there last week, the women were dropping it off, and I stood there and did my little survey, and I said, where you live, where you're coming from. I live in Cedar Knolls, I live in Whippany. So, and I have a question about the St. Joseph situation. Mayor, it wasn't us, okay?
Well,
So,
I don't say it was.
okay, but what I'm saying is if you go out for dinner this weekend and you have a terrible meal at one of the restaurants, you're not going to never go out to dinner again. You just won't frequent that restaurant. What I'm saying is...
You don't know my wife, but that's...
Okay, please don't penalize us.
Right.
If that was the way we do our business, we wouldn't be in Florham Park, we wouldn't be in Parsippany, we wouldn't be in any of the other towns. What you're talking about is...
How can this township, how can this committee design an ordinance for you? If we allow this use of these bins we have to allow the use of these bins to any organization and/or company that comes in and wants to place them. They have their rights to do so.
Okay, you are, and I know that Joe Giorgio is familiar with the state of New Jersey ordinance, which requires certain things. It requires, number one, we get the property owner's written authorization, and I did that. I had written authorizations from Reverend Tony McNaughton. I had written authorizations from Commander Urbanak from the VFW. It also requires that the boundaries of the bins, they can't be close to the road. They need to be picked up. There are fines that are going to be issued to the bin vendors and the property owners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what you're talking about, what you mentioned at the church or wherever years ago, is what we call private bin guy. Pirate bin guys. They come in the middle of the night. They have nobody's permission, nobody's authorization, and you face that. And they just take the bins off until someone does something about it. Now, the way to keep these pirate bin guys out of your town is to put real bin guys on the properties, because when they drive around at night, Mayor, they look for spots that don't have clothing bins. If they would go perhaps to the old Pathmark Center, and they would see authorized bins, they'll just pull away and look for something else. Other towns have faced it, and they realize now, if we want to keep the pirate guys out of our town, we need to put on authorized bin vendors there with stickers, with permits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the ordinance, in essence, Mayor, is in place from the state of New Jersey. And your legal team can look at that and make any variations they want. Basically, that's what everybody has done. They've rubber stamped what the state says, and I have copies of it, and I can drop that off at Joe's office tomorrow. And you take it from there. But if you're concerned with a mess, with a problem, and I understand that, what I'm saying is try it for 6 months. Let's pick a spot together, one spot. Because if we do it right down the road, as East Hanover and Councilman DeMayo know, it could amount to tens of thousands of dollars.
Well, I applaud your effort in terms of recycling. I think this township does a fine job in promoting recycling, has received numerous awards for recycling. And just to bring to your attention, because you might not be aware of it, we do have a facility in Hanover Township for the acceptance of clothing and shoes such as this. We've elected to place it in an area that's controlled. We have it in our DPW yard. So individuals that bring their recycling, they bring their cardboard, bring their newspaper at their convenience, also have the option, if they would like, to deposit this kind of clothing, shoes, in something that's controlled. In addition to what the township provides, we have a number of local religious institutions within this township which have a bi-weekly collection of articles of this nature, and it works fine. Their congregations are involved with that, and so it's not that we're not providing a service. If we were not providing the service to township residents to do something like this, then I might look at it differently. But what we're doing now, it's working. It's working well.
Okay, two things, if I might, and I know I'm over my time limit, okay? I was at the recycling yard the other day, and I've been there time and time again. What you have there is you have two beat-up old bins that have been there for years. Nobody in the town even knows how they got there. The township, if they're being utilized, is not making one dime from the clothing that's being dropped off. Nobody in the township is using them because nobody knows they're there. The program that company offers is not money for the town. They offer bumper stickers, they offer pens, pencils, hats, T-shirts, okay? What I'm talking about is real money for the township to use the way you want to use that. Number two, I'll share a secret with you. The churches that the people are donating the clothes to, everybody wants to think that the churches are giving those clothes to the unfortunate and the needy. They're not. They're calling me. And they're saying, Eddie, we have a basement filled with used clothing. What can you do for me? I just came from Teaneck last
Well,
week.
there you go.
Okay, but
You
it's,
go and you
Mayor,
collect them.
Mayor, it's not enough. I'm just here to give you an update.
I'm not trying to be glib, I really not.
Yeah, I'm just here to give you an update.
Let me say this, and by the way, as I said earlier, and if the committee so desires to review this and go back and take a look, and if you have draft ordinances that you'd like to share with us, we'd be happy to take a look at them, have our attorney take a look at them, see whether or not we feel that we've experienced some of this in the past. We had Morris County Mall had a whole series of these bins. They turned out to be trash receptacles. I hate to say it.
Mayor, how many years ago was that, though? I don't know. I didn't live here. I don't
I'm
remember.
not saying it's recent, but we got rid of them. We had a whole series of them. And somebody didn't want a pair of old shoes. Well, you know what? It didn't go in the garbage. It went in this bin. Or some of this clothing was only good for reprocessing as rags or other things. It wasn't reused as clothing. It's sold by the pound. We know that. Some organizations in this town do clothing collections. It's sold to another entity by the pound, and
That's right.
and that's fine.
But the town's
it's
not
as
making-
though, my point is, it's not as though we haven't experienced this, and we looked at the pluses and we look at the minuses.
Okay, thank you for your time. I'm just here to give you an update. I wanted to show you what we've done at the Babies R Us Center, right down the road, and that's where we are. I'll be back, I guess, in a couple months. Enjoy your summer vacation.
If you have, I'll give our council once an opportunity to make a comment. I'm going to let them do that in a second. But if you have some model ordinances or some other ordinances that East Hanover, other towns might be using,
Right.
save us a little effort. Want to give us a copy of them? Happy to take a look at
Sure.
them. Give them to our zoning officer as well as council.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add is, Mayor, I think about 3 years ago, the New Jersey legislature said that you can basically issue permits for these type of structures or bins. And, you know, when we looked at that, and after the last time you came, the one thing that was apparent to me is that it does say you can regulate and permit. But we need to keep in mind that no matter what you decide to do, these type of bins need to be part of someone's site plan, or they need to be approved. They're essentially considered like accessory type structures. It's no longer just, you know, in my opinion, under the zoning laws, where you just need someone's approval, or else you'd have these, you know, at will, wherever. There needs to be some type of regulation, and you need to obtain some type of approval before you can just put basically an accessory type of use or business on a property and put basically these accessory structures. So gone are sort of the days where people just put them up at will as well. You really have to go through the process. I don't want to make it sound like, you know, the town just is saying, well, no, we're just not interested. It has to be done in a certain way, and it's a lot more than just, well, a property owner says we can put 2 or 3 of these in the parking lot, because you're not necessarily following the site plan or the zoning regulations to do that without necessarily taking the right steps. So there's more involved than just saying yes or no.
That's Fred, that's the other side of it. The zoning is the other side of it.
Well,
And-
Mayor, again, Councilor, thank you. If you're telling me, Eddie, come back in 6 months, we always have the opportunity to look at it again, change our mind. I'll be back, that's all. This is just a report and give you guys an update of what your neighbors are doing. And when I found out that 4 women who were dumping clothes down there at Babies R Us live in our town, I thought to myself, this is silly. Why aren't we doing it, and why aren't we generating the money? That's all, okay? Joe, no, so you certainly have my number, and you know how to reach me. I'll drop off the ordinances, Joe, next week at your office, and then you can pass them on to whomever. Nice to see you, gentlemen, and again, have a great summer, and I guess I'll talk to you in a couple months.
Thank you.
To Hanover Township.
Thank you. Okay, have a good evening.
Drop those ordinances off, and I do tell you, we'll examine them, and we'll have our zoning officer examine them as well.
Okay, thank you again.
Anyone else would like to be heard at this time? The floor is still open. Bill, tell us who you are.
Bill Ames, 6 Cove Lane Road, Whippany. On the issue of the sign ordinance,
I'm a little bit of a loss because I'm assuming you're proceeding with it since I don't see an introduction of an amendment to it. So this may be just a little bit of an overview of what we said before. But just before your last meeting, there had been a Supreme Court decision in New Jersey in a condominium association instance related to political signs specifically, and the question had been whether or not that they could be prohibited. And the court ruled that political speech in particular should not be constrained in the way that it had been in that association, which simply relates to the point that I made in the earlier letter. I think you all received my note that on behalf of the Republican Club was being revoked, and I was speaking on my own at that point because the club had not had a chance to vote on it as a full membership organization. But the officers that did vote on that did concur with the points made, and that is that in trying to address the decorum and the way the township looks, particularly in the light of some of the going out of business signs that we seem to be constantly blessed with, we don't want to overreact to the point of prohibiting everything everywhere at all times.
We don't.
That doesn't work to our advantage. And I'm a little bit concerned that the private property rights in particular, personal private rights, when people are being asked to maintain their property and do all the work on it and then are not given the right to post signs on their own personal property is a concern. It's been a concern that the township was among the most restrictive for many years. The attorneys to whom I speak say that that is flat out not allowed. And Tony Bucco, Jr., concurred with that. I'm not sure what advice you've had from your attorney, but there are numerous Supreme Court cases and others that relate to that particular aspect of it. Third point really is the question of the township's authority with regard to enforcing regulations on state property and county property in those rights of way. It's just a bit of a concern to me that township employees are at risk, policing state and county property. And then finally, our overall concern about commercial signage is a little bit different than political signage. And again, reiterated by the courts, that the expression of political opinion, particularly in an election cycle, but not limited thereto, is an important right that has been carved out in a number of instances, not the least of which is the do not call list on the telephone process. So those points, along with the others that were made in our original letter, still stand. I assume, knowing each of you, that you have given those consideration, and I would simply ask that the ordinance as it was originally introduced not be adopted, and that you look at a more reasonable position on those things. Thank you.
Bill, thank you, and I think we have a comment to that too as well. And I will tell you that we've taken your comments and the comments of the public into consideration, and we are, I think you and I agree that the true intent behind this particular ordinance was not intending to infringe upon the political rights of campaigners, et cetera, to put their signs up. The true intent was to try and take away what I describe as the sign clutter that has beginning to grow in our towns and other towns like it. House for sale, we buy your homes, donate your car to us, free horse rides in this one. I can go on to a whole litany of these, so could you. They cover our right-of-ways, they cover our highways, they cover our streets, and they're there forever. Because unless Public Works picks them up and does the job of cleaning them up, and that's more effort on our part, they will remain there because the very peoples that put them up there aren't going to go back and get them. They just don't do it. And that's true of some of us politicians, too, who left to our own devices would leave them up forever. So that's our intent. We are most concerned, and I think council wants to address a little bit of this as well. We are most concerned with the rights of private landowners. We do not want to infringe upon their rights at all. We want them to have the ability to make their statement for whomever their political sign they wish, whoever they support, on all of their property, private property. And that's the area that we're looking very, very closely on. So I'm going to stop here at that note. And Fred, if you have any comment to this that would help Bill, I think.
Yeah, I think to add to the mayor's comments, I think we've taken into consideration a lot of the comments, and I know the committee has, because they've asked me a lot of questions. And from a legal perspective, with respect to public property, I think that the ordinance as it's presented has that legal standing. And I think that one of the things the committee wants, however, to look at tonight is before it moves on the ordinance, it's asked me to go back and look at the language with respect to the right-of-ways and how that may affect private property owners. And so that's what we're going to do. And then, as I mentioned at the last meeting, the committee also wants me to look at the zoning aspect on the private properties, as you just mentioned, about some of the restrictions and things of that nature, where based on correspondence that was sent, and I understand it was maybe, if it was your letter, retracted, but there was some comments in there that had some fair legal points to revisit, but it was on the private end, it was on the zoning aspect, and I've been directed to go ahead and start to recommend changes. So I think what is happening is the ordinance that's before the committee tonight, they've asked me to go back and just address some language relevant to the right-of-ways and private property owners. You know, for those right-of-ways that adjoin private property, to make some adjustments as to perhaps excluding that from this ordinance. But the remaining aspects, I think, are sound from a legal perspective, and I always get a little bit nervous when someone says they spoke to attorneys and they never say who, and you were kind enough to identify who you spoke to. And I sort of hit the jackpot because myself and Jane Coviello of our firm were partners with Anthony Bucco Jr., and he called me up and he said, I really got to talk to you about this ordinance. And I said, well, let's talk. And we had a conference for about 15 to 20 minutes about it, and went over where we are with this ordinance. And, he understood from a legal perspective with respect to the public property. And maybe he didn't get a chance to get back to you. And, it was always welcome to talk about these things. But he was on the same page from a legal perspective. And yet, as I said, the zoning aspect and the private landowner rights and some of the regulations, I think there was a number of points raised that it's time to revisit, and the committee wants to. So tonight we're going to see, I think, the tabling of the ordinance, make that change, a minor change, but albeit significant as to the public right-of-ways that are adjoining or overlap on private properties. So I believe the committee is going to table the ordinance with that direction.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Bill?
Did I see somebody else have a question? No? Of me? I thought I saw somebody look like they wanted to
No?
ask a
Any other
question.
members?
Okay.
No?
Thank you.
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nope.
Jim Neidhart, Appleton Way, Whippany. I just want to thank the committee for tabling the ordinance and considering the arguments that were put forth, regardless of what you decide. I owe a great deal of respect to all of you for at least considering what the public had said, what I had said. I will just say one more time for the record that I'm not a lawyer. I do follow a lot of what goes on with Supreme Court rulings and alike, so I'm kind of a novice, an amateur hobbyist. But I see an awful lot of precedent for the distinction between commercial free speech and political speech. And in the rulings that I have read, the U.S. Supreme Court in particular raises the rights of political speech above almost everything else, because it is in the First Amendment to the Constitution. And even though, we're talking about public land, I think there's the potential for someone to place suit here And not to say that they're going to win, but they can cost the township a good amount of money for that. And for that reason alone, if not to mention the others, that might be good enough reason to not approve the ordinance the way it's written, and perhaps come back and reintroduce a new bill that would present a carve-out for political speech, however limited it would be, because I do fully support the intent of what the Township Committee is trying to do with this particular ordinance. On a second point, if I could just have another 1 minute, regarding the gentleman that came in here to speak about the bins, I think the township is doing a fine job the way it's currently handling it, having it, as Mr. Farmaska said, in a controlled environment. If that wasn't said, I was going to come up here and make a suggestion that if we were to entertain such an endeavor, that we would do it ourselves. And I would just suggest, although I would always say, reconsider things when, a resident presents something that's reasonable. I believe in that, and I know you guys are very open-minded when it comes to that. I would say, please don't buy into the argument of you're leaving dollars on the table. The township's not going to make money that it could be making, because the job of government is not to make money. So I would not fall for that argument in any way, shape, or form. Even if it's disguised as doing something for the supposed better good of the community, I think you guys are doing a fine job the way you're currently handling it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. We've, by all means, so go right ahead. Your name and address for the record.
Yeah, it's Elisa DeVito, 4 Mount Vernon Way in Whippany, and I quickly jotted some things down after
Speak
work.
right into that microphone, so there you go.
Can you
Your
hear me
voice has gotta
now?
Come all the way up here to these guys.
Can you hear me now?
There you, I can hear you now.
Thank you.
I can hear you now.
Okay. So it's Elisa DeVito, 4 Mount Vernon Way, Whippany, and I just quickly jotted some things down before I got here, right after work, and it's regarding the sign ordinance, and I am against it. So if you just bear with me, I'm just going to read. I jog all over Whippany and Cedar Knolls. I don't know if anybody ever sees me, but I'm out there. And I come across so much trash in the streets, on Boulevard, Eden Lane, just to name a few. Soda bottles, water bottles, soda cans, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, just on and on. Trash on the streets, especially along tree-lined areas or the underpass or the train tracks. And I'm just concerned because you want to designate someone to remove signs, but you don't have anyone designated to remove the litter. And it's just kind of disturbing to me because I enjoy nature. I enjoy jogging, and I see that trash on the streets, along the tree line, and we're a great town. I don't understand why that exists. I know we have money. We're well off. I know we are. We're a good town, good, well-off town. So that kind of disturbs me. So I'd like to see the trash removed. The signs, they could be, you put them up. Responsible people put them up. Responsible people are going to take them down. Let's see. Oh, one thing. For weeks, there's been a huge tire tread sitting near the corner of Park Ave and Jefferson. It's been sitting there for weeks. Nobody's removed it, but I jog by it every single day. Again, trash, I think, might be the issue, not necessarily the signs. Okay, and this might seem off point, so just bear with me. My family suffers from allergies, and they pop decongestants like Tic Tacs at times. It just is part of our life. And yet, I can no longer buy over-the-counter decongestant whenever I want. Why is that? I can only buy 1 pack once a month. I have to present my driver's license. I have to sign on the dotted line, and I go into the computer system. And so anywhere I try to go after that, any drugstore after that, if I try to buy some decongestant, I am barred. I'm not allowed to do it. And again, why is that? Because some kids at some point were crushing decongestants and mixing them with household items, getting high off of it. So because somebody wants to abuse the system, abuse what is out there to help us, others have to suffer. I can no longer get decongestants whenever I want. Do I have to go to my friends? Can you, it's like black market for decongestant. Over-the-counter decongestant cannot be gotten. And yet, so we're doing the same thing with the signs, regulating everything to death, because of maybe somebody who is irresponsible in some way, shape, or form. And then the majority have to suffer. Same thing with the signs. It's the same exact thing. It's an issue. It's a freedom of speech issue at risk here. And I was just wondering, when does it stop? When does all the regulations stop?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See this gentleman right here in the center?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Mr. Eames there, yes.
You're on a little higher level in some of your issues, which is good, But he's the gentleman you might want to talk to about some of these concerns on the states might be able to pitch in a little bit here, and everything from clean roads, et cetera, and maybe even a training program for people who like to throw their things out the window rather than wait for trash barrels and so forth. And I never did understand that, but that's a whole other issue of upbringing. But you bring up some good points, valid points, and I wish on a municipal level we could help you with some of them. But I think there's some people in the room that might be able to give you some more direction on that. Good. Anyone else would like to be heard at this point? Hearing none. Seeing none? Motion for close?
Thank you. Excuse me, darn. I'll try to be
under the wire.
Right. I'll try to be quick. I went to the freeholders meeting last night, and I just wanted to update you on what transpired there. They, about 2 weeks ago, agreed to, they passed an ordinance against Agenda 21. I know you've been hearing about this for a while. They passed an ordinance against that, but in the same ordinance, they agreed to get into a consortium. Lucy Tashern should be here. She can speak more accurately to this because she's been really following it very closely. But they voted to participate in a statewide consortium of about 33 members representing municipalities, a couple of NGOs, some state representatives, various, and I guess some freeholders. But that being in that organization is contingent upon accepting these HUD grants. Mm-hmm. And so what they did when they adopted the ordinance against Agenda 21, they really, in our opinion, contradicted themselves by, in the same ordinance, I guess I wasn't at that meeting, but apparently in the same ordinance or resolution, they decided to get into this consortium. And so we raised concerns about that at that meeting last night. And Ann Grassi felt, she will be the representative on the committee, she felt that it was prudent to be on that committee, it's prudent to be on the inside, rather than the outside looking in, and you know what's going on, you theoretically have a voice. But the problem is that they have a very defined mission. It's not going to change in a lot of our opinion, and there's a box that's prescribed, and they will play inside the box, and they will not be allowed. That's not the mission of the committee to go outside of that box. And what comes along with those HUD grants is a lot of strings. And their concern is if they don't get the HUD money, they don't get the HUD money, and somebody else does. But our concern is that what comes with that HUD money is some really tough requirements and some serious strings attached. So I sent you all today an email, except Mr. Bruno, I just don't have your email, but I sent you all 2 videos that I've come across recently about Agenda 21, and they, you know, the things that I see happening in the state of New Jersey from the state development plan, which I think you're aware we're also taking issue with, right down to the local municipalities and sustainable New Jersey. And I know we're bad. John says we're only a bronze community. We're not a gold community, apparently, from sustainable New Jersey perspective. That's a very good thing, because the more we get into this, and it's just like the HUD grants, it's like they're offering you candy, and they're coercing you, they're encouraging you to do this, but along with it comes a lot of costs.
You don't think Trenton would do that?
Sorry?
You don't think Trenton would do that?
Oh, no. No, of course not. But, you know, in Hanover Township, you know, we've seen over this past 6 or so months that you adopted a couple of ordinances, and I think you had very good intentions, and maybe as we've discussed together the Agenda 21, maybe some of you have come to see it from a slightly different perspective, but the tree ordinance, in respect to the drip lines of the trees. I drove down my street the other day from my house to Whippany Road, which I passed maybe 40 houses totally. I think there were 6 or 7 that I could see, and there were some decks that I really couldn't see, who have trees, where the houses have trees over their decks. So I have to ask, if they went to replace that deck, are you going to tell them no, or would it be pre-existing, or what? But there are a lot of decks that exist over trees, not to mention if you're going to build an addition there. So you read the tree ordinance, which limits how many trees you can take down and costs money if you want to take down trees, limits construction. You pass the green construction ordinance bill also. And, you know, we've all gotten to think all this green stuff is wonderful until you look at the larger plan, which I know you're becoming more and more familiar with, and I sent you 2 great videos to watch. So I guess I would just ask you if there's going to be any thought about those 2 ordinances, whether maybe that was an overreach or not, and just to be very aware as stuff comes down from Sustainable New Jersey, as it will, it is all tied in with Agenda 21, and if you don't think so, you need to study a little bit more. These 2 videos that I sent you, well, without a question of a doubt, one of them specifically shows the linkages between Agenda 21, Sustainable New Jersey, ICLEI, right down to the local level. So you know, is there a possibility that, have you discussed at all the tree ordinance or
we are
construction ordinance?
John, you want to?
Yeah.
Yes, in fact, and you want to comment?
I can assure you that we are in the process of trimming and pruning the tree ordinance.
Okay.
In a way to make it,
Wait a minute.
rationalizing it so that we fully understand the impact of it as to how it affects property owners. How does it affect residential property?
Right.
How does it affect the ability to redevelop within Hanover Township? While at the same time promoting a suburban community, which we have, and we want to foster that. But we're relooking it, re-examining it, and that will be one of our goals to accomplish over the next couple of meetings to get a new tree ordinance update.
Okay, great. The construction ordinance, I don't know whether, we're just happening to be putting a new deck on our house right now, and when we went for the permit, Bill said, phew, we just slipped in under the percentage, because I guess you've lowered the percentage from 30 to 25% impermeable coverage. You look at my house, I could have extended it 5 more feet, would have looked great. I'm okay with what I have, but that would have not passed muster because, I mean, this is all agenda. I mean, this is all the same stuff. It's driving your construction area coverage down.
Yeah.
And you look at my house, if you came and looked at my deck, you'd say, well, yeah, you could easily go 5 more feet. It would give you a lot more space. Would not be objectionable. I can't imagine it would really be objectionable, impringing on my neighbor's property or anything, but it would not be allowed because you've decreased that percentage.
The committee may address the floor area ratio, which you're speaking about within the industrial zone.
Being examined.
The next step would be to examine it in residential zone.
Yeah, yeah, because it's really driven by I believe by Agenda 21. Cut down all your building area. Thanks very much.
Tree ordinance, in theory, was well intended when it was drafted. Some of it purpose being for reforestation, but in theory is one thing, but when you apply it in practice, and we looked at it, it just becomes so prohibitive, and we know that. So it is being redrafted. It is being looked at as we speak, and we have, as you know, a lot of exciting things happening here in our township in the way of new economic development, quality economic development, good neighbors that we do want, and the last thing we need to do is to impose heavier restrictions on them with ordinances that'll scare them out of town. We're not going to do that.
If a person has a deck and it's now under, just for that one, for example, and it's under a tree line, if they go to replace that deck as I'm doing now, would they be prohibited from doing that under a tree line?
I don't know how much.
I could answer
Go ahead.
Would the deck replacement just be the replacement of the deck portions or the footings? If you're just removing the deck,
I don't know.
then no.
Say I wanted to expand my deck and it was still in the under the allowable percentage, but it happened to be under the drip line.
If you wanted to expand your deck.
Say right now say the old one's under the drip line, but you just passed the ordinance recently. I'm just going to
the
replace
old one's
exactly
under the drip line, and you're going to remove the wood and replace it.
Yeah, same square
That
footage.
would be fine because you're not disturbing anything underneath the deck. The footings are already there.
Okay.
There is no net disturbance area, there's nothing, not gonna hurt the
Okay.
root system.
So it's geared toward
The whole purpose is really to protect the trees and the root systems.
Gotcha. Did you see the Daily Record article where they're all got their hands on the trees, they're looking up at the tree?
No.
Wasn't that great?
Oh, God. Framed to trees.
It was missing a few people that I thought I knew. Strike that from the video, please. Barbara, I could tell you the topics that you're talking about are the topics we're talking about, so we're on the same page. Hanover's not going to lose sight of the ball, and that ball is local home rule. Ain't going to happen.
Appreciate it.
We're disappointed in the Foreclosure Act and moving forward on that. The language in there, even though we're being told is not prohibitive, is prohibitive. It is very controlling, and it gives the townships a lot of latitude that if they don't take, the state will take.
Right.
So it still has a lot of issues, and we'll be looking at that too.
I don't know whether the freeholders, they have written a letter to Trenton over the state development plan and stuff, and they're not even getting a response. I've written a letter to Kim Guadagno's office, try to get a meeting with her about the state development plan. Scheduler will get back to you, and then they don't. I don't know whether we can all work together, because they're ignoring all of us individually, and maybe if we work together.
Legislation down at Trenton is trying to do things that are one size fits all, and it doesn't work that way. Certainly not in suburban communities. This Foreclosure Act is ludicrous, but in any event, I don't want to get on my fully pulpit here.
Can I just do a 20-second on that, just to update you?
Sure.
It's before the governor.
That's Bill talking. Okay.
Bill Ames, yeah. It's, the Foreclosure Act is before the governor. He's considering which way to go. He has not given a clear indication on that. I was down there testifying at the hearing, and one of the points made was rather shocking to me, and that is that because of the authority given to the mortgage finance agency to bond, they can come in, even though foreclosure was the precipitating nudge for the law.
Mm-hmm.
The law doesn't limit them to that. Once they're empowered through the Foreclosure Act to bond, they can borrow money, buy market rate houses, commit them to 30-year periods of time, and turn them over to a community development agency to manage. So the implications of that are very severe, and where you have seen that historically is in Newark, for example, with the North Ward New Community Corporation, that type of thing. But there has been some talk, to my understanding, about places like East Hanover, and if something were to happen there, then we're right next door. So a big concern.
So some communities, not to get into a type of dialogue on this particular, but some communities may in fact invite the Foreclosure Act, and I can understand it. And in certain urban cities, it has its advantages. Clearly, it does have its advantages and puts property to better use or good use. But leave that decision to the communities. Leave that decision to the communities. We know best what is good for ourselves. We don't have to be dictated to. On that note, is there a floor is still open? If anyone else would like to speak at this time? Hearing none. Seeing none. Motion to close.
So moved.
Moved and seconded?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Administrator, thank you.
Okay, on ordinance number 13-12, do we have a motion?
Motion to
carry?
table.
Well, we have tabled, motion to carry.
Carry.
Have so motion by Mr. Faramasca.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schleifer. Roll call, Mr. Schleifer.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Ordinance 14-12. There's an ordinance of the Township Committee amending and supplementing ordinance number 31-2011 and chapter 61 of the Code, entitled Salaries and Compensation, Personnel Policies, which chapter establishes regulations and rates of compensation for the officers and employees of the Township. This ordinance will be further considered for public hearing and final passage at the July 26th meeting of the Township Committee. And at that time, any person wishing to be heard here in the main meeting room will be given the opportunity to be heard. The ordinance and the notice of introduction will be published in full in the Daily Record in accordance with law. May we have a motion on introduction?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Capola.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bruno. On roll call for introduction. Mr. Schleifer.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Franciulli.
Aye.
So introduced. Ordinance 15-12 is an ordinance of the Township Committee amending and supplementing ordinance number 3-12 and section 125-4 entitled Recreation Department Fees under chapter 125 of the Code of the Township entitled Fees with the inclusion of new resident and non-resident pool membership fees for the year 2012 Bee Meadow swimming pool season for the period beginning August 1st through September 3rd, 2012. This ordinance will be further considered for public hearing and final passage at the July 26th meeting of the Township Committee at 8:30 p.m. here in the main meeting room. At that time, any person wishing to be heard concerning the ordinance will be given the opportunity to be heard. The ordinance and the notice of introduction will appear in full in the Daily Record in accordance with law. May we now have a motion on introduction?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Bruno, second by Mr. Capola. On roll call for introduction, Mr. Schleifer.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola. And Mr. Franciulli.
Aye.
So introduced. Ordinance 16-12 is an ordinance of the Township Committee amending and supplementing Chapter 166 of the Code of the Township entitled Land Use and Development Legislation by revising the floor area ratio and improvement coverage regulations in the I-5, the IB, and the IP2 zone districts. This ordinance will be further considered for public hearing before the Township Committee on July 26th at 8:30 p.m. And at that time, any person wishing to be heard concerning the ordinance will be given the opportunity to speak. The ordinance and the notice of introduction will appear in full in accordance with law in the Daily Record. May we now have a motion on introduction?
So moved.
So moved by Mr.
Second.
Ferramaska, seconded by Mr. Franciulli. On roll call for introduction, Mr. Schleifer.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Franciulli.
Aye.
So introduced. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we now turn to page 2 of your agenda, and this is a consent agenda on resolutions. We have one additional resolution that is not listed on your agenda, but was discussed in conference work session by the governing body. And that resolution is as follows. This is a recommendation from the Director of Planning, Mr. Ferramaska, and it is a resolution of the Township Committee appointing Michael E. Critchley to serve as the Class 4 regular member to the Planning Board in filling the unexpired 4-year term of office of Maria Florio, and that term of office will expire on December 31st, 2013. Are there any questions from any member of the governing body concerning the resolutions which appear as the consent agenda?
None?
Hearing none, we'll state for the record, however, that Committeeman Bruno has advised me that he will recuse himself and abstain from voting on item 1A, dealing with full-time seasonal personnel for the Bee Meadow Swimming Pool, Summer Playground Program, and Proctors, and will so note that for the record. At this time, may we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Schleifer, seconded by Mr. Capola. On roll call, Mr. Schleifer.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno, with the exception of 1A.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Franciulli.
Aye.
So approved. Ladies and gentlemen, we now go to the next portion of business, raffle applications. Raffle application 2558, Our Lady of Mercy Church Holy Name Society, calendar raffles on the following dates: October 1st through October 31st, 2012, November 1st through the 30th of November, 2012, and December 1st through December 31st, 2012, all at the OLM Parish Center, 90 Whippany Road, at 10:30 a.m. in the morning. Raffle application 2559, Whippany Fire Company, for 50/50 raffles on July 9th, 16th, 23rd, and 30th at the Brickyard, B Meadow Field, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Raffle application 2560, Two Kids Foundation, a 50/50 on-premise on the 5th of August at the Birchwood Manor between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.
5th of August, huh?
Correct. Raffle application 2561, Creutzfeldt Jacob Disease Foundation, a 50/50 on-premise on the 13th of October at the Ukrainian American Cultural Center between 6 and 11 p.m. Raffle application 2562, the Creutzfeldt Jacob Disease Foundation, an off-premise raffle on the 13th of October at the Ukrainian American Cultural Center between 6 and 11 p.m., and that's at 16 North Jefferson Road. Raffle application 2563, the Creutzfeldt Jacob Disease Foundation, for a tricky tray on the 13th of October at the Ukrainian American Cultural Center between 6 and 11 p.m. Raffle application 2564, Foundation for Diabetes Research, and that will be an off-premise raffle on the 16th of October at the Birchwood Manor, 111 North Jefferson Road, between 6 and 9 p.m. And finally, raffle application 2565, Foundation for Diabetes Research, for an on-premise raffle on the 16th of October at the Birchwood Manor between 6 and 9:30 p.m. Are there any questions about any of the raffles?
Joe, can you just note for the record, I'd like to recuse from the Whippany Fire Company
Okay,
raffle?
so note for the record that Committeeman Schleifer is recusing himself from voting on the raffle application for the Whippany Fire Company.
Two kids.
And Committeeman Capola will recuse himself and not vote on the raffle application for the Two Kids Foundation.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion by
Second.
Committeeman Faramaska, seconded by Committeeman Capola. On roll call, with the exceptions and abstentions noted, Mr. Schleifer?
Aye.
Mr. Faramaska?
Aye.
Mr. Bruno?
Aye.
Mr. Capola?
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Township Committee, that clears the agenda of the Business Administrator, Township Clerk, and I thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Okay. Gentlemen, at this time, is there any other comment from the Township Committee? Bob?
I have one, well, it's a couple items, but we'll package it all together under recreation. We've got fireworks and music coming up on Monday, July 2nd at Whippany Park High School. Festivities will begin at 7 p.m. With the karate demonstration, and then at 8 o'clock we've got Ace Gallagher and his band. The fireworks will begin right around 9 o'clock or whenever it gets dark. And the rain date is July 5th, so just note if there is inclement weather, we won't be holding it on the next clear night, as often used to be the case. It'll be postponed until Thursday the 5th. Also, the subsequent Mondays, each Monday in July, so we've got the fireworks on the 2nd, then the 9th, 16th, 23rd, and 30th from 7:30 till 9 at the Brickyard. We'll be having our summer concert series. I just want to note and commend our new superintendent for raising private funds to offset the cost of all 4 of the summer concerts. And we thank her for her efforts in those areas, getting donations to pick up the tab. So lots of music in Hanover Township beginning next Monday. Again, Monday will be at the high school, and the following 4 Mondays over at the Brickyard.
You know some of the groups, Bob?
The groups are all well known. If I'm going to be given some additional time. On the 9th will be the Infernos.
Yay.
I can't say what style of music they play, but the 16th, the B Street Band, which will be Bruce Springsteen. You're sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure. On the 23rd will be Total Soul.
I do apologize.
And then on the 30th will be the Duprees, which I believe will be a 50s style music. So something for everyone.
Very good.
The B Street Band is terrific. They're really
An endorsement from the attorney.
George, anything?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. First of all, as far as Veterans Alliance is concerned, on the 16th of this month, the mayor and I attended a ceremony over at Picatinny Arsenal for a dedication ceremony in honor of Chris Cosgrove, a resident in Cedar Knolls who lost his life in Afghanistan. They were dedicating a Marine Corps recruitment facility in his honor. Actually, Home Depot did all the work on it and actually put the signage up on the building. They had a beautiful plaque with his picture on it. It was attended by a number of high-ranking officers, to include the resident general and our own Congressman Rodney Feilenheisen. As far as landmark, we have completed all the necessary work to finalize the dedication ceremony to honor Bob O'Gelly, who served as chairman for many years and had a deep affection actually for the burial yards on Route 10. So they're actually going to have a plaque with a stone and a tree, and the committee and residents will be advised of the actual dedication date.
That'd be wonderful.
This evening I did attend, on behalf of the Board of Education and Public Safety, at 6 p.m. an anti-bullying symposium at the Morris County Police Academy with Ace Gallagher, who is a member of the Hanover Township K-8 Board of Education. The purpose was to learn more about bullying and the law. 3 areas they looked at was the understanding the role of law enforcement in bullying incidents, understanding the anti-bullying law, and the best practice for educators to be discussing. Currently, our current prosecutor, Robert Bianchi, okay, I keep forgetting his name, was there, as well as our newly appointed prosecutor, Fred Knapp, to be appointed. But it was very interesting, and I will provide a write-up for the committee. As far as public safety, on the 19th of this month, we did have over 200 people attending a session presented by Chief Gallagher, Captain Walden, Lieutenant Roddy, Sergeant Pestich, on getting involved with Neighborhood Watch. We were provided also with the background information on a couple of recent break-in incidents, as well as 2 handouts which were posted on our website. They are the National Neighborhood Watch Program, Preventing Burglaries and How to Protect Your Home, and also what Neighborhood Watch is not and how to get involved, which you can make a difference. Because they did give you the do's and don'ts. On Thursday, representatives from Fire District 2 and 3 met at Cedar Knolls Firehouse to continue their discussions on the combining of both fire districts by both fire boards of fire commissioners. In addition to the members of both fire commissioners, there was also a Mr. Richard Braslow, Esquire, who was brought in for legal counseling. I also believe our mayor was there. He was also in attendance. From the minutes I received, there was a rather lengthy meeting, and Mr. Braslow agreed that consolidation is a serious undertaking, but the 2 boards, they really have to take a hard look, because this will happen whether they want it or not. This was out of the minutes I received. There are future plans to further discuss ongoing concerns. That's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it. Kenny, John, anything?
Just one comment. We all just received a report on examination of the financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2011. I want to congratulate our finance department. This is the report card for 2011. And as I can see, we're in compliance, so great job. I haven't got through the entire book. We just received it. So I made it through the comments and the introduction so far. In the detail, I haven't gone through yet, but it seems that we're in compliance with all state statutes. And
Don't let him fool you, Silvio. You just went to the summary in the back. John?
Yes, I'm very pleased to announce that professional soccer will soon be coming to Hanover Township.
Yes, it
Great
will.
news in that the Red Bulls preliminary And final approval was given for their soccer complex to include 3 full-size professional soccer fields on Melanie Lane. Great addition to our community, low impact, fabulous rateable, and very pleased that they'll be coming to join us here.
They will. That's good. And we're talking to them today. We're trying to get together on a tax situation. Finally, and George mentioned this Operation Safe Homes. And by the way, Chief, that was a great presentation. Went over very, very well. Everybody appreciated it. I never saw so many people leave a room that didn't have positive comments, so I thought that went exceptionally well. Even the mayor learned something. My doorbell rang a couple of mornings ago, about 8 o'clock in the morning. There was a lovely gentleman standing at my door in a service uniform from Spear Air Conditioning, and with his clipboard and ready to service my air conditioning. There was just one problem. I don't have air conditioning from Spear, and I don't have equipment that this gentleman was there to service. So it prompted a little question. And he looked at his clipboard again, and he says, well, I guess it's not 9 Slope. Well, it wasn't. But needless to say, and as annoying as I thought it might be, I still made the phone call to dispatch. Is what we should do. Ryan Williams was on the board and made a second phone call to Spear, only to check out that the dispatch gave this gentleman the wrong address. Well, I felt better, and I hope this gentleman went on his way, safely. So my point here is nothing is too small to bring to the attention of the police if you see something wrong, particularly now these days. So, take advantage of our police department's offer to follow up on anything you have.
Mr. Mayor, may I add something to that?
Sure, George, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to add one thing, that when Lieutenant Roddy spoke to the residents, one thing he made very clear, you know your neighborhood better than anyone. And if you see something that doesn't look right, you're much easier for you to identify it than, police officer just happen to be going by. So it's important that when you see something like that, not to be concerned that you should be afraid to call the police. Nothing, they're going to be more than happy to check it out. As I told everyone that evening, and that happened to me personally. I made the phone call, they checked it out, everything was fine, but when somebody starts, as the mayor said, somebody working on someone's house on a Sunday, sometimes you think, well, I guess it should be, because who would be working on a Sunday? But it was checked out. I called the police, there's no harm done, and the resident actually called me and thanked me. So I think it's important that if you see that, acknowledge it, and don't be afraid to call the police. That's what they're there for.
Can't have enough eyes. Anything else from the committee? No. Hearing none. Motion to reopen the meeting to the public?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Floor is once again open. If anyone would like to address the Township Committee?
I just wondered if you can give us an update on the Whippany Road Bridge.
Which one, Bill?
Whippany Road Bridge.
The information that we have is still consistent, Dave, and I think is the target date for completion, since we closed our road, we didn't want to leave one lane open or not, in order to expedite the matter, is September. Now, I don't know if the county is...
I have been told they're shooting for October. But
October
they
now?
are going to try.
Yep.
They said October is reasonable, but they're going to try to get it even before that.
Okay.
That was the information I was given.
I will say one thing for the county, and it was true on Eden Lane. They finished ahead of schedule. And so if they're being conservative with October, I'm happy. So if it moves up from there, that'd be great, But seems to be moving along. I know we're tolerating the inconvenience. All our other roads and arteries
Well,
are taking...
I think the decision to close the whole thing down is the wiser way to go. People get used to the inconvenience.
The only way to cut down on the time to get it done, and I know we're suffering a little more inconvenience on Jefferson Road, and the Whippany Road is a little confusing, but it's better this way. Better this way. Anyone else in the public like to be heard?
A quick question.
Barbara?
When you get someone that comes to your door, like from NJ Perg, or I had 2 young girls knock on my door, they always seem to be from some far left organizations. But they were advocating something kind of political. Do they have to get permits, or is that, can they just knock on your doors? Like New Jersey Perk, use that as an example. People
You mean
know who that is, Do they have to get permits to do that?
Canvassing or what?
They're canvassing, public interest research group, they often are advocating an environmental cause, collecting money.
I know they're supposed to stop by the police department,
Yeah.
chief, aren't they supposed to have a?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
An ID?
They will usually stop by, you can call the police desk either way. Because they don't always, sometimes the religious groups do stop by and use a description of their cars or license plates, they're gonna be in a certain section of town, a certain day, but I'm not saying that's 100%. You can always call us, just as before.
But are they supposed to notify you before?
I don't think they have to, they do it as a courtesy to us, so when people do call, that, we'll not be burned out.
I mean, we've also had situations where, and Joe, you correct me if I'm wrong, but in applying the ordinance in some of the cases that are out there, we've reached compromises where the groups have to at least notify us, identify who they are, and then notify.
At times, however, these organizations do not, as the chief pointed out, do what they're supposed to do. And there are many times when the police do respond, and we found that they're in violation by not reporting their activities to the police
So
department.
they are supposed to tell you.
Yes, yeah.
The main thing these days is
Use caution.
fault on the side of caution. Somebody looks strange, the matter doesn't look right, do not open the door. Just do not open the door. Anyone else like to be heard at this time? Hearing none, seeing none. Motion to close?
So moved.
Second. Motion
Aye.
to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved and seconded, adjourned. Gentlemen, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we have,
Yes, got a busy.
we have a pretty good